We're going to be starting right at the very beginning this morning, so Genesis chapter 1, which you can find on page 3 of the church Bibles. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And now continuing on from verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. It'd be great if you could keep those words in front of you from the Bible. We'll be exploring them together over the next little while. My name's John Risbridger. I'm one of the ministers here, and excited that you're with us at the beginning of this journey that we're making through the whole of the Bible. You may be familiar with the TED Talks that are out there, these little short, succinct video talks that you can find on the internet, which, to quote their kind of corporate phrase, are designed to communicate ideas worth spreading. And there are loads of these things that you can watch online. Well, the other day I was having a drink with a friend of mine called Dave, who is here this morning, comes often to church, not yet convinced about Christianity, but we talk together and have great fun. And he just said to me, "John, I like it when I go to church, but I don't get it always. You talk all over the Bible. One week it's Mark, and then it's Daniel, and then it's something obscure. How does the whole thing fit together? How can I make sense of it all?" And then he said, "Why don't you just do a load of short TED-type videos to explain the whole thing, and then we'll understand?" Well, the jury is still out on whether I'm capable of doing short, succinct. But the next 10 weeks at Above Bar are my response to Dave's request. And in case you kind of feel the same way as Dave, let me just say there's an opportunity tomorrow night at the Cowherds at 8:30 p.m. Hopefully it's going to come up on the screen for a bit of talk back. So if you're not yet convinced, this isn't like a Christian home group meeting in the pub. It's if you're not yet convinced that it's true and you'd like the opportunity to come and talk back, raise the questions, Dave and I will be there 8:30 to 10, and you're welcome to join us as well. And by the way, if you're sitting here thinking, "No, that's not for me, but I've got a friend for whom that would be perfect," look, the download, the video, the internet version of this will be up online by probably 6 o'clock this evening. Pass the link on to them, and they can come tomorrow as well. We really want to engage. Just going back to TED Talks, though, one of the 25 most watched TED Talks of all time is by the marketing guru Simon Sinek, and it's called "How Great Leaders Inspire Action." And what Sinek has done in his research is to look at great leaders whose ideas have changed the world. People like Steve Jobs from Apple and the Wright brothers and Martin Luther King. And he's looked at the way that they communicate their ideas. And what he's noticed is that they always begin by answering the question, why? What's your purpose, he says. What's your cause? What's your belief? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? Why should anybody care? Why? That's the key to communicating ideas. You've got to answer the why question. And of course, it is a key challenge for how leaders of any kind lead. But I want to suggest to you it's actually bigger than that. It's actually a challenge for the way that we navigate life itself. We need to answer the why question. Why are we here? Hugely important question. But actually many of us really struggle to find an answer that's compelling. You may remember Adrian Holloway, who was speaking last week at the Discipleship Day, talking about a conversation he'd had with somebody who wasn't sure where they stood in faith terms. And Adrian had said to him, well, do you believe that you exist for a reason? And the guy said, yeah, yes, I do. And I think most of us do deep down think we exist for a reason. But he said, I have absolutely no idea what that reason is. I think I exist for a reason, but I have no idea what that reason is. Well, that's where many of us are, I think. But don't you think it's rather a big question just to leave hanging there? Like the whole purpose of our existence? I mean, it is kind of important, isn't it? Why are we here? I want to suggest that the best way to find an answer to that question lies in thinking about what story we are a part of. What story do we belong to? Are we simply accidents of time and chance, complex machines at the end of an impersonal, unguided process of blind evolution, the story of naturalism? Or are we somewhere in a cycle of reincarnation, working our way towards being absorbed into the undifferentiated oneness of the universe, the story of pantheism? Or is there actually no big story, or at least no big story that we could ever know? And so, frankly, all that life is about is just muddling along, trying to have the best time that we can. The story, if you like, of postmodernity. Or is there a better story? A story that makes sense of who we are. A story that can give to us security, identity, hope, and purpose, so that we can answer the question, why are we here? I want to suggest to you that there is a better story, and that's why we need to get into the Bible and take it seriously, because the Bible claims to be that better story. The word Bible just means book. But really, it's more like a library than a book. It's a collection of 66 books divided into two uneven halves. I know that's not a mathematically precise sentence, but that's okay. So there's the longer Old Testament, which largely tells the story of Israel. And then there's the shorter New Testament, which introduces us to Jesus Christ. Those are brought together in the one Bible. But although the Bible is made up of these 66 books, it actually does tell a single compelling story. A story that starts with creation, where we came from, who we are, why we matter. A story which then faces up to the problem of what's gone wrong with us. Because at the end of the day, it's pretty obvious that something's gone wrong with us, isn't it? I mean, we don't exactly live in a tidy, peaceful world, do we? Something has gone wrong. And that's the next step in the story. Something has gone wrong. And it's sometimes called decreation, the undoing of all that we were meant to be, the great disaster that's come on the human family. But thankfully it doesn't stop there, because it continues with the story of a great plan that streams all the way through history to put things right, to sort out the mess. You could call it the story of recreation, a story that's bursting with hope and redemption, and a story which is centered on the most intriguing and challenging and wise and loving man who ever lived, Jesus Christ. Jesus, who made this claim to be God in human flesh, and yet who ended up smashed to death on a Roman cross. He stands at the center of the story. And then the story finishes with a vision of life restored to all that it was meant to be and more besides. We could call it new creation. And it finishes with a guarantee that that vision is not just a kind of escapist pipe dream. It's something that will be fulfilled, because it rests not on what we're going to do for God, but on what God has done for us in his Son, Jesus Christ. There's the Bible story in 4 words: creation, decreation, recreation, new creation. Not that difficult, really, is it? You can just reduce it to those 4 words. But just imagine for a moment what it would be like to understand your own life within the framework of that story. To understand yourself as someone created by God for something wonderful, and yet spoiled by something tragic, yet offered hope through the most wonderful story ever told, and guaranteed a future in the presence of God forever. That would be some story to belong to, wouldn't it? And the invitation to get into the Bible story is the invitation to find yourself within that great story. It begins with the story of creation. Why are we here? And the first answer to that question is that we're here because God was here first. That's just the first few words of the Bible, isn't it? In the beginning, God. In the beginning, God. That's really bold, isn't it? You might have expected a bunch of arguments for God, a bunch of lists of evidence for God. But no, what you've got is just the raw assertion he's there. In the beginning, God. Now, there is a place for arguments and evidence, and we'll perhaps look at a bit of that as we go through. But the trouble with that approach is easily it can help us get things the wrong way round, so that we start to think that our existence comes first, and then we're the judges evaluating whether God has the right to exist or not. And in many ways, that's been the whole starting point for Western thought over the last 400 years. The dictum of the Enlightenment by Descartes: I think, therefore I am. What comes first? My thinking, my rationality. And on that basis, I decide about everything else. I think, therefore I am. The Bible says no, that's not the way the world is. Rather, God exists, therefore I am. And that changes everything. We're here because he was here first. We are evaluated by him, not him by us. Why are we here? We're here because God was here first. Why are we here? We're here because God made us. I wonder if you've heard of Stuart Butterfield. Here's a picture of Stuart Butterfield. He's a Canadian entrepreneur, and a while ago he raised a load of investment money to come up with a video game that he hoped was going to make millions. Sadly, he and his team didn't get on too well with the video game, and it just wasn't working. And so he went back to his investors, offering to return to them all the money that was still to be spent. But the investors said, no, we believe in you. We believe in you. We believe in your team. Just keep going. See what you can do with this money. So they went back to think, and they said, well, There is one thing that we've done so far that all of us really love, and it's really nothing to do with the video game. It's just we've developed this internal messaging app for team communication, and it's really sweet. It works fantastically. And so they called it Slack, and they made it available to the public. And it wasn't just them that loved it. Everyone that used it loved it too. And within a year, Slack was worth over $1 billion. And in 18 months, it was worth $2 billion. Must be one of the greatest high-tech startup stories of all time. But look, the startup story that begins the Bible is in a completely different league even to that, isn't it? Chapter 1, verse 1 of Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This is not 0 to 2 billion in 18 months. This is nothing to the universe because God acted. It's the greatest startup in all of history. Even Steve Jobs couldn't manage anything on that kind of scale, could he? But what we've got here is so much more than just a faceless, impersonal Big Bang. It's much more. Verse 2. Now the earth was formless and empty. Just notice those words. Formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So the creation happens, but it lacks form and it lacks fullness. And in the rest of the first chapter of Genesis, God works on creation at those two levels. First, he gives form to what was formless, days 1 to 3, light and darkness, water and sky, land and vegetation. Then, he gives fullness to what was empty, stars, planets, fish, animals, vegetation, finally, people. In other words, God doesn't just kind of wind the whole thing up at the beginning and then let it go. No, God's word guides the development of all of the richness of created reality as we have it. Look at a sunset, painting the sky with magnificence. It's like that because God set it up that way. Look at a flower with all its extravagant beauty. It's like that because it says something about God. Look at a mountainscape, feel your breath taken away, and you're seeing something of the grandeur of God. It's his work. He has guided the whole of its creation. And it's awesome. Now, I know very well that people will tell you that modern science has discredited Genesis and left it entirely unnecessarily. And I have to concede that, yes, it's true that Christians don't all agree on exactly how we read this chapter, whether we read it as literal history or poetic symbolism or some combination of the two. There are many different options and possibilities. And to be honest, it's an area where as Christians we agree to differ. But let me just ask you to think about it in a slightly different way. This is slightly risky. I hope I'm not going to get into trouble for this. But anyway, I want you to think about a kiss. Okay? I read this description of a kiss on the internet earlier this week. I'll read it to you. A kiss begins with a tilt of the head, usually to the right. Did you know that? Anyway. Facial muscles with lovely names like orbicularis oris and zygomaticus coordinate a sequence of intricate motions between lips, cheeks, and if you choose, the jaw and the tongue. I should probably have censored that bit out. A rush of hormones and sensory messages flood the body and the brain, and the heartbeat flutters faster. There's a kiss. That sounds kind of okay, doesn't it? But to be honest, that isn't what makes a kiss interesting, is it? It isn't really what makes a kiss significant. The physics, the physiology, the biochemistry of kissing. I mean, to a point, but it isn't the point. What makes it interesting is the fact that she loves him. It's the why, not the how, that matters most. And that's the most important thing about Genesis as well. It isn't the how of creation, the question of mechanism that really matters most. It's the why, the question of purpose that matters most. And I want to suggest to you that when it comes to the question of purpose, even Dawkins himself, that most inveterate of atheists, comes pretty close to admitting that the why question needs explanation. Let me give you this quote from one of his books. He says, "The universe could so easily have remained lifeless and simple, just physics and chemistry, just the scattered dust of the cosmic explosion that gave birth to time and space. The fact that it did not, the fact that life evolved out of literally nothing some 10 billion years after the universe evolved literally out of nothing, is a fact so staggering that I would be mad to attempt words to do it justice." Interesting, isn't it? Now, don't misunderstand me. He's not concluding from that there is a God, although to a crowded conference in Christchurch, New Zealand, he did once say, "It's an astonishing stroke of luck that we are here." And honestly, such a shameless appeal to luck is surely an admission that the final answer to the why question lies outside the scope of science. It just isn't a question that science can answer. And frankly, it would need to be the most astonishing luck anyway. The astrophysicist Hugh Ross has shown that the probability of one planet existing in the entire universe with the conditions required for life is about 1 in 10 to the power of 30. Tiny, tiny probability. It led the theoretical physicist Paul Davies to conclude this. He said, "It seems as though someone has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming." And do you know what Dawkins has to do if you put that evidence to him? He has to speculate about the existence of a multiverse, multiple parallel universes to make the probabilities add up. Is there any evidence in the universe for multiple parallel universes? None whatsoever. And yet Dawkins' blind faith in his atheism makes him cling to something for which there is no evidence whatever. And then he accuses us of having closed minds. Creation requires an explanation, a why. And the Bible's answer is that human persons come not from impersonal time and chance, but from a personal God who desired that we should exist. We're here because he made us. Why did he make us? Well, we are here to represent God. There's our third major conclusion this morning. We're here to represent God. Have a look again at verses 26 and 7 of the passage. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. The Nobel Prize-winning geneticist Francis Crick once said this. He said, "You, your joys and your sorrows, your memories, your ambitions, your sense of personal identity and free will are in fact," strong claim, "in fact, no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules." Get it? It's all you are. Physiological processes. It's all you are. But friends, does that really work? It is the logic of naturalistic scientific materialism, true. But does it work? Can we live with it? I want to say to you, go into any hospital neonatal unit in the country and you will see a different story. You will see this incredibly strong instinct that even the most fragile, unproductive human life is unimaginably precious. Why? Why? If human beings are just machines, why not let the weak ones fail? If human beings are just animals, why not let only the fittest survive? Few of us could accept the logic of that. But why? Friends, here is why. Yes, genetically human beings are very close to other mammals. Yes, human beings are not less than complex machines, but we are more than mammals. We are more than complex machines. We are created to be like God. We are made in his image. And it's only that reality that can anchor our sense of human value and dignity, that can make sense of our awareness of good and evil, that can make sense of this deep intuition that there is a purpose, that there is a significance to our lives. It only makes sense if we understand that we are created to be like God. I'm trying to advance that. Yeah, here we go. Created to represent God, made in his image. Now, what are the implications if we take that seriously? There are many, but let me just run through these few very quickly. It means, number one, that we are made for work. God making us in his image is not just some cosmic vanity project. He made us in his image in order to be his representatives within creation. Verse 26 again, God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and the livestock and all the wild animals. Verse 28, God blessed them, he made them in his image, and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Now, our rule here doesn't give us the right to rape the planet and do what we like with creation. It's still God's creation, and we are made not to be autonomous rulers, but to be representatives of him, ruling it on his behalf, guided by his wisdom and his kindness. But God set us to work in creation, so that just as he worked to bring about creation, we are to work, as those made in his image, to look after it and use its resources well. Lots of implications I'd love to draw out. Just one. Your workplace is God's place. Got it? Your workplace is God's place. He set you to work. He set me to work. Number two, we are also here to rest. See, God doesn't exist only to be productive. He also exists to enjoy the goodness of all he's made and to rest and enjoy it when the work is done. End of chapter 1, verse 31. God saw all he had made. It was very good. There was evening, there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. And then it's as if God stops to enjoy what he's done. Verse 2, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. And then God blessed the seventh day, and because on it he rested from all the work of creation that he had done. In other words, God rests, and then by making the seventh day holy, he shares his rest with us. We are made for rest. We're not only made to be productive, we are also made to enjoy the goodness of what God has given us and the goodness of what we have made. We're made for rest. But that word holy, God makes the seventh day holy. It tells us that rest is about more than just stopping working. It's about reorientation. It's about recreation. It's about remembering who we are. That we're astonishing people made in the image of God to represent him in creation. And it's about growing and nurturing our relationship with him. We're made to rest. Thirdly, we are here for relationship. I don't know if you noticed the strange language back in chapter 1, verse 26, but it is very strange, isn't it? God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and so on. Verse 27, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Interesting. God refers to himself in plurals, us, we, our. And then he speaks of us in plurals too, them, male, female. Well, as the rest of the Bible unfolds, that makes a bit more sense. But for now, we can just say that God is a complex unity of persons. And so is the human family. In some deeply mysterious sense, which Christians call the doctrine of the Trinity, three persons perfectly united in the one God, God exists and has done forever in an eternal relationship of love. He's a relational kind of God. And he made us in his image, so that we too are made to love and to be loved. We weren't made to be complete in splendid isolation. We were made to be complete in authentic relationship with each other. Relationships matter to us. They really do, don't they? And they're meant to, because relationships matter to God, and we were made to be like him. But of course, human relationships alone are not enough, are they? And actually, when we depend on human relationships too much, they can't bear the weight that we put on them. They will fail and will get hurt, and all of us have experienced that. Yes, we're here for relationship, but we're here for the ultimate relationship. We don't have time to look at all the details, but as we go on through Genesis 2 and 3, it becomes clear that because we are made in God's image, we have the capacity to relate to him. Chapter 2, he's talking to us, providing for us, caring for us. Chapter 3, he's walking with the first human in the cool of the day in the garden, in relationship. This is the ultimate relationship for which you and I were created, a relationship with God himself, our creator. This is the relationship that has been shattered by our desire to put ourselves at the center of the world and push God to the edge. But this is the relationship which can be restored to us through Jesus Christ. And ultimately, that is what the whole Bible story is about. We human beings are not just mammals. We are not just machines. We are people. We are persons made to know God, made for purpose, made to know why we're here. Well, if you want to know the next stage of the story, come back next week. But just watch the screen to see how this has worked in the life of an ordinary guy called Sean, and then the musicians will lead us.
There was always a sense of something more that I couldn't quite get hold of. My name is Sean, and this is my story. I used to enjoy going out, drinking, clubbing, that kind of stuff. But, sort of on the outside, kind of had everything pretty much together. So in terms of what was going on underneath, I had a sense of a void, a bigger purpose and reality, but couldn't quite put my finger on it. I did go to church when I was a young boy, but it didn't really register to me how it was relevant in my life. For one reason or another, I ended up with an offer to go to Hong Kong with my work. And it was really out there, I think, when I was away from my family, I started to become aware of things a bit more, and then it all came to a head where I had my auntie and uncle come to visit me. I was showing them how great my life was, introducing them to my friends, showing them the sort of night scene, all that kind of stuff. So I showed my auntie and uncle all this stuff, and they're very strong Christians. And on the very last day, they said to me, we've seen your life here, Sean, and we think it's great on the outside, but we get the sense that you're looking for something and you haven't found it. And we've been praying for you. But what they said really rang true, and they left. And it really just gave me a moment of kind of reflection. I think the day after I went to church. I didn't know really where it would lead. But they advertised a Christianity Explored course, and I signed up. and I got plugged into a small group. That was really vital because I think otherwise church was just a Sunday thing, but this was actually seeing people actually looking through the Bible, you know, working out how it affected them. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting, actually, people trying to put this into practice. There are things that I've done that I regret. So knowing that in God you're forgiven in Christ is really fundamental. I think that's what made Christianity really real for me, actually, was because, you know, like I said, I didn't know who God was, but then this sense of needing forgiveness, it all suddenly started to make sense. When you realize that there's somebody who, or God himself, who takes that on himself and brings you into a new relationship and gives you a new sense of hope, that, you know, it's okay that we do mess up, but actually he's a solution. It's not about me, it's not about my past, it's about my future.